Hello and welcome back to the workshop. I gotta say, after the last video, I am a little less stressed out about where we're sitting here. The back went on beautifully. We've got a nice seam. I've cleaned it all up. I did all that off camera. It's just a bunch of sanding, so you guys don't want to see that. But we're looking nice, smooth all the way around. It looks like a guitar. Did the dry fit, and this locking system works beautifully. I even went ahead and reconsidered my neck, so I slimmed it down by a couple millimeters. So now we're sitting at about 20.5 millimeters here and about 22 at the 12th fret. So we've got a nice thin C profile. Because it was all essentially an acoustic, I wanted a little bit of a thicker neck, but after toying around with it on the dry fit, I felt like the neck was just way too chunky. So with that being said, what we've got to focus on this time around is getting some frets on and getting this prepped for finish, because as it stands right now at this recording, I've only got a few more weeks to finish this. So first and foremost, I think we're going to work on the frets. So I'm getting prepped to do the frets. To save on time, I'm just going to get right to it. There are loads of videos that I have done that goes over my method of how to do it. There are also loads of videos on many other people's sites on how to do this. I can definitely do a more in-depth one later on if that is what someone wants, but to save myself on time for the Gray Guitar Build-Off, as I've only got a few weeks left, I'll just quickly go over my method of what I do. So very basically, as you guys have seen in my other builds, I like to oil the fretboard first. See that color pop there? I do this once just to help keep the glue from seeping into the grain and to at least get a coat, maybe two on there before the frets go in. Then from there, I'll cut my fret wire to length. Before that, you need to put a radius on your fret wire. That's where the fret bending jig comes in. You can make your own. I've done a video showing you that whole process. Or you can buy one from various different suppliers. But you need to make sure that your radius is just over what the radius of your fretboard is, so that that way it can then push itself into place. After I've cut them to length, I will go ahead and I will, if this is a bound fretboard, I'll go ahead and nip off the ends of the tang. I don't know if you can see that, but it's got a little bit of overhang here. When I nip off that tang, I'll nip it off about a millimeter or two away from the edge of my binding, because when you pound it in, it's actually going to push out this way, because I have done a radius that is wider than what my fretboard is. And then from there, all that you really need to do, I like to use a syringe. I put some glue in there. I use wood glue and not super glue. Super glue is messy. It makes it really hard to take out the frets later on, which can then end up tearing out your fretboard. So I like to use a little bit of wood glue. It fills in the gaps, and it makes sure to add a little more grip around the tang to help hold them in place. Plus, it is not a mess when you have to take them out later to do a refret. I like to use the syringe because it is less messy, and I've got various different tips for thicknesses to let the glue flow in different ways. That way I'm not ending up cleaning up the fretboard more than is necessary. And then from there, I will just pound them in. I will start by tapping in the edges, start in the middle, and work my way to one side and then the other. And then from there, it's basically just nipping off the ends and dressing the frets. So I'm going to get to it. We'll come back when they're all in and cut to length. And then we got to address some finishing touches, i.e. cutting off this tail block. I would like to add a piece on the back of my heel here, because the more I was thinking about it, with this odd headstock, I have nowhere to put my logo, so I think I want to put it right here on the heel. We've got to drop in the brass pieces for the strings to go onto, and then we've got to sand this bad boy down so that we can put it together. So we've got the frets in. They're looking nice. What I'm doing here is I'm going through and I'm filling in all these wormholes and any voids that I find, any separations with gold. And the reason behind that is it's an old Japanese technique used primarily with pottery. It's called Kintsugi. It is the idea of mending broken pottery with gold and a tree sap lacquer that they make in order to give the piece a new life after it's been broken. Because the theme is Asian themed, I figured that with all these voids and wormholes, especially in the maple here, but any cracks that happen during my bending in the body here, I'm going to go through and I'm going to drop fill with gold before I do the final sanding, utilizing this Kintsugi technique. And what that does is it emphasizes the story of the piece rather than hiding it with glues and other adhesives to basically tell its story. Now obviously this is a new instrument, so it doesn't have the exact same effect, but it'll have the same concept as I'm filling all these voids with the gold to emphasize them rather than hide them. So very simply, much like I did with this, I'm just going to drop fill it with some CA glue and the gold powder, and I'm just going to keep doing that on all of these cracks and voids until everything is filled. And then at that point I will then go back and do the final sanding to get this ready for oiling. Alright, so I've gone through and I've filled every last crevice I could find with the gold powder to accentuate those cracks. So all that's left to do before I can start sanding is I would like to complete my logo in the heel here. So I'm going to treat it just like a regular inlay. And as you know, I've already been doing quite a bit of filling with this gold powder, and the gold powder gets everywhere. So I'd like to be done with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. Alright, there it is. I just need to do some final sanding on it. Alright, at this point I think I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to go ahead, now that I've sanded down the body here, and get the oil on it so that while this is drying, that way I can finish working on the neck. So that way when I oil the neck, I can come back to the body and put all the hardware together. suppose all that's left is to apply some oil to the neck, and then we can start putting it together. Nice flamey piece for the neck here. We're going to hang this up, let this dry. I'm going to do one more coat on it, and then the neck will be ready. The body has already had 2 coats on it, meaning I can start working on the hardware on that as soon as that one's dried. So we'll be back when we can put the body together. The time has come. It's finally here. We're ready to go to assemble it. What do you think I was going to say? Look at that. Finish turned out great. Now we just need to put her together. So I guess with all that, roll the montage.